Over the past few weeks, we've now seen consistent reports on Canada's economy that have been difficult to ignore. The signals are very clear right now. Things are slowing down. In some ways, we may already be in a recession. I personally think we are in one right now. First of all, it started with the GDP numbers. In the second quarter, the Canadian economy actually shrank at an annualized pace of 1.6%. That's not just a small dip either. That's the sharpest correction we've seen since the pandemic, and the first time in nearly 2 years that the GDP has actually moved backwards. While the Bank of Canada has penciled in some weakness, most economists were only calling for about 0.7% decline. In other words, the slowdown has hit twice as hard as experts expected it to. Then, of course, we had the jobs data last week. In August, we lost 66,000 jobs. That's not even a small adjustment. That's a massive number. National unemployment rate obviously went up to 7.1%, which marks the highest level we've seen in 9 years outside of the pandemic. Even more concerning is the trend in long-term unemployment. The number of Canadians out of work for more than 6 months is creeping back towards levels we haven't seen since 2011. That kind of trend is really hard to reverse. Now, if you look at the breakdown regionally, in Toronto, unemployment has surged to more than 9%, the highest level in 15 years. Obviously, youth unemployment, very concerning, has climbed to 14% in Toronto. I think even nationally, youth unemployment is even higher than that. So to put that into perspective, these are the kind of figures that we easily associate with a recession. And Desjardins even pointed out that youth unemployment has risen far faster than unemployment among older age groups. So it's one thing when the labor market slows down overall. It's another when an entire generation can't even start, right? Their careers. They're being totally shut out from beginning their whole career path. So what's the big question? How do we get here? I think a huge part of the answer is definitely the way immigration policy was handled. Over the past, I would say 5 to 10 years, Canada leaned heavily into immigration as the main driver of growth. Over 1 million newcomers a year were arriving in Canada, right? We saw the statistics, the news, right? Obviously a mix of foreign students, permanent residents, temporary foreign workers. During the immediate post-pandemic recovery, this made sense to do this, but it's because some businesses were desperate for labor, even though I don't really think we truly had a labor shortage during that time. All right, restaurants, retailers, hotels, entertainment venues couldn't hire fast enough, so we started bringing in a lot of people to fill the gaps. The government relaxed work restrictions for international students and non-permanent residents. So in the short term, it worked, but as the economy cooled, that strategy backfired majorly. The number of jobs available has not kept pace with the amount of workers coming into Canada. Too many people are chasing too few jobs and opportunities. The result is higher unemployment, especially among young Canadians who now face competition from not only their peers, but also from waves of foreign workers and international students that are entering the job market at the same time. Here's what I think. This isn't just like a political left versus right issue. Politicians from across the political spectrum are now like openly questioning whether Canada overshot with this immigration or the temporary foreign worker program. Even people who normally disagree on everything are actually coming together to discuss this point because it's been everyone's mind and eyes so mishandled. We all see that the labor market is flooded and wages are so suppressed because of this. Some are already calling it one of the biggest policy mistakes over the last several decades, and I personally agree with that. I think it was handled horribly. The impact doesn't even just stop with jobs, right? It's almost like you wish it was just jobs. Housing has been so deeply affected by this because it touches everyone in one way or another. So policymakers and developers banked on that rapid population growth to keep housing demand strong. But now with immigration numbers slowing, artificial boost that we saw, now it's being slammed back down. Rents are finally starting to ease in Ontario and BC. On the surface, That looks like good news for renters who have been crushed by these sky high costs with inflation. But for developers, it's a complete nightmare. Many built projects assuming demand would rise forever. And their business models simply don't work if rent levels fall off. And obviously, we can't forget about just home ownership for average Canadians. If young people can't find work, or they're stuck in these precarious, low-paying jobs or part-time positions, and they can't move to a decent full-time job, how can they possibly ever qualify for a mortgage or buy a house, right? It's almost going to be impossible for these people. Practically is impossible right now. The labor market and the housing market are two sides of the same coin, and right now they're both flashing all kinds of warning signs to everyone. It's so obvious. I don't even know how you can disagree with that at this point. So if you put all this together, it's hard to escape the conclusion that Canada is already in recession. I think we've been in it now for a while, practically maybe months already, maybe at the beginning of the year, but I think we're already in it. Whether the government is ready to admit it or not, GDP is shrinking, jobs are disappearing, population growth, once the engine of the economy is slowing dramatically, that will have an effect. Even nominal GDP, the raw dollar value of everything produced, is at a risk of moving lower now. The one bright spot on the horizon is interest rates, but I personally have my own thought on it. So markets are now pricing a 90% chance that the Bank of Canada will cut rates on September 17th, which is just about 9 days from now, up from only 40% just a few weeks ago. So with the US Federal Reserve expected to cut rates this month, the BOC has political and economic cover to make the move. So for the 60% of Canadians who will have to renew their mortgages over the next year and a half, that could bring some relief. Even a modest drop in borrowing costs will help that financial strain. I personally don't think it's going to improve the housing market at all, because these cuts will just signal that our economy is in a bad spot. Now, this is obviously like a short-term thing, right? These cuts are not going to fix everything, right? There'll be a short-term solution, but you can't just paper over these massive structural problems with our economy with cheaper debt. We're already loaded up to the you-know-what with debt, right? We have some of the highest debt to GDP, debt to income levels, whatever you want to measure a debt by, in the entire world. And we've been following or just relying on debt too much in Canada, on rapid population growth, low interest rates to prop up the economy, while ignoring productivity, innovation, and long-term competitiveness. And I think now we're going to pay the price, unfortunately. And I think, what's going to happen is, unfortunately, there's going to have to be a reset, right? We have to have immigration targets match our economic capacity, or what we're even able to produce as a country. That means we need to invest in more productivity and not just relying on more people and more debt to hopefully do something. We need some sort of real housing strategy that prioritizes affordability and sustainability to actually purchase properties. We're not talking about rentals here. Can't just have, again, endless construction and speculation like we had before. Until these changes happen, we're just going to keep going on this same road. Boom and bust, growth, contraction, emergency cuts followed by emergency hikes, right, if things get too hot again. And again, who pays the price every time this happens? It's not the policymakers, right? It's not the corporations in Canada. It's the people who are working the normal jobs, nurses, teachers, the average Canadian, families who are crushed by housing costs, homeowners staring down mortgage renewals. Young people are losing hope before they even get started. It's sad. I think rate cuts might buy us some time personally, but they're not going to buy us like a brighter future in any means. Unless Canada changes course, we're going to be stuck in this cycle of repetitiveness over and over. And unfortunately, every downturn will feel worse than the last. So let me know what you guys think of that.